Hey friends, tonight we're diving deep into one of history's most fascinating civilizations that dominated the ancient world for over 3,000 years. We're talking about ancient Egypt, a land where pharaohs ruled like gods. Massive pyramids pierce the desert sky, and mysteries still baffle archaeologists today. From the banks of the Nile to the tombs of kings, this is a journey through 100 incredible facts that will completely change how you see this legendary civilization. So grab something comfortable, let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight, and let's unlock the secrets of ancient Egypt together. The story of ancient Egypt begins long before the first pyramid was ever built, stretching back to a time when the Sahara wasn't the vast desert we know today. Around 8,000 years ago, this region was actually a green savanna filled with rivers, lakes, and abundant wildlife. As the climate gradually changed and the rains stopped falling, people began migrating toward the life-giving waters of the Nile River. This single river would become the foundation upon which one of history's greatest civilizations would rise. The ancient Egyptians called their land Kemet, which means the Black Land, referring to the rich, dark soil left behind by the Nile's annual floods. This wasn't just poetic language. The contrast between the fertile black soil along the river and the red desert beyond was literally a matter of life and death. Every year, the Nile would flood its banks, depositing nutrient-rich silt across the floodplains and creating some of the most fertile agricultural land in the ancient world. The Nile River flows northward for over 4,000 miles, making it the longest river on Earth. But here's something that might surprise you. The ancient Egyptians actually lived their lives upside down, compared to how we think about geography today. To them, south was up because that's where the Nile originated, and north was down because that's where the river flowed toward the Mediterranean Sea. Upper Egypt was in the south, and Lower Egypt was in the north, which can confuse modern readers of ancient texts. The civilization we recognize as ancient Egypt actually emerged from the unification of two separate kingdoms around 3100 BCE. A legendary ruler named Narmer, also known as Menes, conquered Lower Egypt and united it with Upper Egypt, creating the world's first nation-state. This unification wasn't just a political achievement, it marked the beginning of a continuous civilization that would endure for over 3 millennia, longer than any other civilization in human history. Ancient Egyptian society was incredibly complex and sophisticated, organized into a strict hierarchy that placed the pharaoh at the absolute top. The pharaoh wasn't just a political leader. He was considered a living god, the earthly incarnation of Horus, and after death, he would become one with Osiris, the god of the underworld. This divine kingship gave pharaohs unprecedented power and authority over every aspect of Egyptian life. Below the pharaoh came the nobles and priests, who managed the vast bureaucracy that kept the kingdom running. The priests didn't just perform religious ceremonies, they were also astronomers, mathematicians, doctors, and engineers. They managed temple complexes that functioned as centers of learning, healing, and economic activity. These temples owned vast amounts of land and employed thousands of workers, making them some of the most powerful institutions in ancient Egypt. The writing system of ancient Egypt, known as hieroglyphics, consisted of over 700 different symbols that could represent sounds, ideas, or entire words. But here's what's truly remarkable about hieroglyphics. The same symbol could function in multiple ways depending on its context. A picture of a bird might represent the actual bird, the sound that bird makes, or an abstract concept associated with that bird. This flexibility made hieroglyphics incredibly expressive, but also extremely difficult to master. Learning to read and write hieroglyphics was so challenging that only a small percentage of the population ever became literate. These educated individuals, called scribes, held positions of enormous respect and influence. In Egyptian society, scribes kept records of everything from tax collections to military campaigns, from religious ceremonies to trade agreements. Without scribes, the complex administration of ancient Egypt would have collapsed completely. The ancient Egyptians were master builders who created some of the most impressive structures ever constructed by human hands. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built for Pharaoh Khufu around 2500 BCE, originally stood 481 feet tall and contained over 2 million stone blocks, each weighing between 2 and 15 tons. For over 3,800 years, it was the tallest human-made structure in the world. But the pyramids weren't just impressive because of their size. They were architectural marvels that demonstrated an incredible understanding of mathematics, engineering, and astronomy. The Great Pyramid is aligned to true north with an accuracy of just 3/60 of a degree. Its base forms a nearly perfect square, with each side measuring approximately 756 feet. The precision required to achieve this level of accuracy using ancient tools and techniques still amazes engineers today. The construction of a pyramid required an enormous workforce and incredible organization. Recent archaeological evidence suggests that the pyramids were built not by slaves, as Hollywood movies often portray, but by paid workers who were well fed and given proper burials when they died. These workers lived in purpose-built villages near the construction sites, complete with bakeries, breweries, and medical facilities. Egyptian medicine was surprisingly advanced for its time, with doctors who specialized in different areas of the body and specific diseases. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, dating to around 1600 BCE, contains detailed descriptions of surgical procedures and anatomical observations that wouldn't be out of place in a modern medical textbook. Egyptian doctors could perform complex surgeries, set broken bones, and even perform brain surgery in some cases. The process of mummification, which the Egyptians perfected over thousands of years, wasn't just a religious ritual, it was also an incredibly sophisticated understanding of chemistry and preservation. The mummification process could take up to 70 days and involved removing internal organs, treating the body with natron salt, and wrapping it in hundreds of yards of linen bandages. The goal was to preserve the body for the afterlife, and in many cases they succeeded so well that mummies remain remarkably intact thousands of years later. Ancient Egyptian women enjoyed rights and freedoms that were extraordinary for the ancient world. Women could own property, run businesses, serve as witnesses in legal proceedings, and even initiate divorce proceedings. Some women rose to positions of tremendous power, including several who ruled as pharaohs in their own right. Hatshepsut, who reigned for over 20 years during the 15th century BCE, was one of the most successful pharaohs in Egyptian history, male or female. The Egyptian calendar, developed over 4,000 years ago, was remarkably accurate and formed the basis for the calendar we use today. The Egyptians divided the year into 365 days, organized into 12 months of 30 days each, plus 5 additional days. They also developed a sophisticated understanding of astronomy, tracking the movements of stars and planets with incredible precision. Trade was the lifeblood of ancient Egypt, with merchants traveling throughout the known world to acquire luxury goods and raw materials. Egyptian expeditions sailed to the mysterious land of Punt, probably located somewhere in modern-day Somalia or Ethiopia, to bring back gold, ivory, exotic animals, and precious incense. They traded with civilizations as far away as Afghanistan for lapis lazuli and with Lebanon for cedar wood. The ancient Egyptians were also master craftspeople who created beautiful jewelry, furniture, and decorative objects that still dazzle viewers in museums around the world. They were among the first people to work with gold on a large scale, developing sophisticated techniques for mining, refining, and shaping this precious metal. The tomb of Tutankhamun alone contained over 3,000 individual objects, many made of solid gold. Religion permeated every aspect of ancient Egyptian life, with a complex pantheon of gods and goddesses who controlled different aspects of the natural and supernatural worlds. Ra, the sun god, was considered the king of the gods, while Isis was revered as the ideal mother and wife. Anubis, with his jackal head, guided souls through the afterlife, and Thoth, the ibis-headed god, was the patron of scribes and wisdom. The concept of Ma'at, representing truth, justice, and cosmic order, was central to Egyptian thinking about how the world should function. Pharaohs were expected to maintain Ma'at through just rule and proper religious observance. When a person died, their heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at to determine whether they were worthy of entering the afterlife. The afterlife wasn't just a distant hope for ancient Egyptians. It was a concrete destination they spent their entire lives preparing for. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, which wasn't actually a single book but rather a collection of spells and instructions, served as a guidebook for navigating the dangers of the underworld. These papyrus scrolls contained over 200 different spells that would help the deceased overcome obstacles, answer questions posed by gods, and ultimately reach the field of reeds. Their version of paradise. Egyptian art followed strict conventions that remained remarkably consistent for thousands of years. Human figures were always depicted in a specific way, with the head and legs shown in profile while the torso faced forward. This wasn't because Egyptian artists lacked skill. It was a deliberate artistic choice, designed to show each part of the human body from its most recognizable angle. The size of figures in Egyptian art also had meaning, with more important people depicted as larger than less important ones. The tools and weapons of ancient Egypt evolved dramatically over the millennia. Early Egyptians used copper tools and weapons, but around 1500 BCE, they began working with bronze and eventually iron. The composite bow, made from wood, horn, and sinew, gave Egyptian archers incredible range and accuracy. Egyptian chariots, introduced during the New Kingdom period, revolutionized warfare and allowed pharaohs to build a vast empire that stretched from Nubia in the south to the Euphrates River in the north. Ancient Egyptian mathematics was surprisingly sophisticated, using a decimal system and developing methods for calculating areas, volumes, and even basic algebra. The Rhind papyrus, dating to around 1650 BCE, contains 84 mathematical problems and their solutions, demonstrating that Egyptian mathematicians could handle complex calculations involving fractions, geometry, and practical applications like calculating the slope of pyramids. The pharaohs' power extended far beyond Egypt's borders through an extensive network of diplomacy and trade. The Amarna letters, discovered in the late 19th century, reveal a sophisticated international correspondence between Egyptian pharaohs and rulers throughout the ancient Near East. These clay tablets, written in cuneiform script, show that Egyptian diplomacy involved marriage alliances, tribute payments, and complex negotiations over territory and trade routes. Egyptian agriculture was incredibly productive thanks to their mastery of irrigation techniques. The shaduf, a simple but effective device for lifting water, allowed farmers to irrigate fields even during the dry season. The Egyptians also developed crop rotation systems and understood the importance of fertilizing their fields with animal manure and Nile mud. This agricultural abundance supported a population that may have reached nearly 3 million people at its peak. The role of animals in ancient Egyptian society went far beyond practical uses for farming and transportation. Many animals were considered sacred and were worshipped as manifestations of various gods. Cats were particularly revered, associated with the goddess Bastet, and killing a cat, even accidentally, was punishable by death. When pet cats died, wealthy families would mummify them and bury them in special cat cemeteries. Egyptian clothing and fashion were both practical and symbolic. The quality and style of clothing indicated social status, with wealthy Egyptians wearing fine linen garments, while common people wore coarser fabrics. Both men and women wore makeup, not just for beauty but for practical reasons. Kohl, made from ground minerals, protected their eyes from the harsh desert sun and helped prevent infections. The ancient Egyptians invented many things we still use today. They created the first known peace treaty, signed between Pharaoh Rameses II and the Hittite king Hattusili III around 1259 BCE. They developed early forms of paper from papyrus plants, created the first recorded surgical procedures, and even invented bowling, playing a game remarkably similar to modern 10-pin bowling. Egyptian music and entertainment played important roles in both religious ceremonies and daily life. Musicians used harps, flutes, drums, and sistrums to accompany religious rituals and provide entertainment at banquets. Dancing was also highly developed, with professional dancers performing complex routines at religious festivals and private celebrations. Board games were incredibly popular, with Senet being the most widespread game, played by everyone from pharaohs to common workers. The construction techniques used by ancient Egyptians were far more sophisticated than many people realize. They understood principles of leverage, used ramps and pulleys to move massive stone blocks, and developed mortar that was so effective that some ancient structures remain standing today. The precision of their stonework was extraordinary, with blocks fitted so tightly together that you cannot slide a knife blade between them. Egyptian knowledge of chemistry extended far beyond mummification. They developed sophisticated techniques for glass making, creating beautiful colored glass objects thousands of years before similar techniques appeared elsewhere. They also mastered metallurgy, creating alloys and developing methods for extracting metals from ore that were remarkably efficient for their time. The Library of Alexandria, built during the Ptolemaic period, represented the pinnacle of ancient learning and scholarship. This legendary institution attempted to collect all human knowledge, housing hundreds of thousands of scrolls on every subject imaginable. Scholars from throughout the Mediterranean world came to Alexandria to study mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. Though the library eventually declined and was destroyed, its influence on human knowledge was immeasurable. Ancient Egyptian timekeeping was incredibly precise, using both solar and lunar calendars to track different types of events. They divided the day into 24 hours and developed sundials and water clocks to measure time accurately. Their astronomical observations were so precise that they could predict solar eclipses and track the movements of planets with remarkable accuracy. The role of dreams in Egyptian society was considered extremely important. Egyptians believed that dreams were messages from the gods and developed sophisticated methods for interpreting their meanings. Dream interpretation became a specialized profession, with trained priests who could explain what various dream symbols meant and what actions the dreamer should take based on their visions. Egyptian law was surprisingly sophisticated, with written legal codes that covered everything from property rights to criminal penalties. Legal proceedings involved testimony from witnesses, presentation of evidence, and formal judgments by trained magistrates. The concept of legal precedent was well established, with previous court decisions influencing how similar cases were handled in the future. The ancient Egyptians developed advanced techniques for food preservation that went far beyond mummification. They learned to dry fish and meat, ferment grains to make beer, and preserve fruits and vegetables using salt and other natural preservatives. This allowed them to store food for long periods and maintain stable food supplies even during poor harvest years. Transportation in ancient Egypt relied heavily on the Nile River, which served as the country's main highway. Egyptian shipbuilders created vessels ranging from simple reed boats for local travel to massive cargo ships capable of carrying stone blocks weighing hundreds of tons. They also developed sophisticated navigation techniques, using the stars and landmarks to guide their journeys up and down the river. The influence of ancient Egypt extended throughout the ancient world through trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. Egyptian artistic styles, religious concepts, and technological innovations spread to other civilizations, while Egypt itself absorbed influences from Nubia, the Near East, and the Mediterranean world. This cultural interchange enriched Egyptian civilization and helped spread their achievements to future generations. Egyptian astronomy reached remarkable levels of sophistication, with priest astronomers who could calculate the length of the year to within minutes of the actual solar year. They identified and named many constellations, tracked the movements of planets, and used their astronomical knowledge to determine the best times for planting crops, conducting religious ceremonies, and making important political decisions. The legacy of ancient Egypt continues to fascinate and influence people around the world today. Their achievements in architecture, medicine, mathematics, and art laid foundations for much of human civilization. The mysteries that still surround this remarkable culture, from the exact methods used to build the pyramids to the location of lost tombs, ensure that ancient Egypt will continue to capture imaginations for generations to come. The mysteries surrounding ancient Egyptian burial practices extend far beyond the famous pyramids and elaborate tombs we see in documentaries. Recent archaeological discoveries have revealed that even ordinary Egyptians practice sophisticated burial rituals, wrapping their deceased in linen and placing them in wooden coffins decorated with protective spells. These discoveries challenge our understanding of who had access to afterlife preparations, suggesting that the desire for eternal life wasn't limited to the wealthy elite. Egyptian perfume and cosmetics industries were incredibly advanced, producing scented oils and makeup that served both practical and spiritual purposes. The famous Egyptian eyeliner wasn't just a fashion statement. It contained lead-based compounds that actually helped prevent eye infections in the dusty, sun-drenched environment along the Nile. Women and men alike used these cosmetics, and the recipes were so closely guarded that some formulations have never been successfully recreated by modern chemists. The ancient Egyptians were master engineers who developed water management systems that would impress modern city planners. They built complex networks of canals, dikes, and reservoirs that controlled the Nile's annual floods and distributed water throughout their agricultural regions. These irrigation systems were so effective that they supported dense populations in areas that would otherwise be uninhabitable desert, demonstrating an understanding of hydraulic engineering that wouldn't be matched elsewhere for centuries. Egyptian dentistry was surprisingly advanced for its time, with evidence showing that dentists could drill cavities, create dental bridges, and even perform tooth transplants. Archaeological examination of mummies has revealed sophisticated dental work, including gold wire used to stabilize loose teeth and artificial teeth made from ivory and gold. The wear patterns on ancient Egyptian teeth tell stories of their diet, which included coarse bread that gradually wore down their dental enamel over time. The role of scribes in Egyptian society cannot be overstated. These literate individuals weren't just record keepers. They were the backbone of Egyptian administration, responsible for calculating taxes, recording legal proceedings, maintaining temple accounts, and preserving the vast body of Egyptian literature. Becoming a scribe required years of intensive education, memorizing hundreds of hieroglyphic symbols, and learning to write on various materials from papyrus to stone. Ancient Egyptian sports and physical fitness were taken seriously, with evidence of organized athletic competitions and training programs. Wrestling was particularly popular, with tomb paintings showing detailed wrestling holds and techniques. Swimming was another prized skill, especially given the importance of the Nile River in daily life. The Egyptians also played early versions of hockey and handball, demonstrating that organized sports were an important part of their culture. The Egyptian understanding of human anatomy was remarkably detailed, gained primarily through their mummification practices. This knowledge made Egyptian doctors sought after throughout the ancient world, with foreign rulers often requesting Egyptian physicians to treat their ailments. The Edwin Smith Papias reveals that Egyptian doctors understood the relationship between the heart and pulse, could diagnose various internal conditions, and performed surgical procedures with remarkable success rates. Egyptian textile production was one of the most advanced in the ancient world, with linen being their specialty fabric. The process of creating fine linen from flax plants was incredibly labor-intensive, involving multiple steps of soaking, beating, and spinning the fibers. The finest Egyptian linen was so prized that it became a major export commodity, traded throughout the Mediterranean region, and beyond. Some linen found in Egyptian tombs is so finely woven that it rivals modern machine-made fabrics. The ancient Egyptians developed sophisticated accounting systems that tracked everything from temple donations to royal treasury holdings. These accounting practices used a decimal system and included concepts like double-entry bookkeeping that wouldn't appear in Europe for thousands of years. Papyrus documents from ancient Egypt show detailed financial records that demonstrate the complexity of their economic system and the importance they placed on accurate record-keeping. Egyptian mining operations extended far beyond the Nile Valley, with expeditions traveling deep into the desert to extract gold, copper, and precious stones. The Wadi Hammamat inscriptions record organized mining expeditions involving thousands of workers, complete with detailed supply lists and administrative structures. These operations required sophisticated logistics to transport equipment, food, and water across hundreds of miles of harsh desert terrain. The concept of justice in ancient Egypt was deeply intertwined with their religious beliefs, centered around the goddess Ma'at, who represented truth and cosmic order. Egyptian courts operated under strict legal principles, with judges who were expected to be impartial and honest. Legal documents show that Egyptians could appeal court decisions, sue for damages, and even bring charges against corrupt officials, demonstrating a surprisingly modern approach to jurisprudence. Ancient Egyptian gardens were marvels of design and engineering, creating oases of beauty and productivity in the desert environment. Wealthy Egyptians created elaborate garden complexes with artificial pools, shade trees, and carefully planned layouts that maximized both aesthetic appeal and practical function. These gardens often included vineyards, fruit trees, and vegetable plots, demonstrating the Egyptian ability to transform harsh landscapes into productive spaces. The Egyptian military evolved from a simple militia into a professional fighting force that dominated the ancient Near East for centuries. Egyptian soldiers were equipped with sophisticated weapons, including composite bows, bronze swords, and leather armor. Military organization was highly structured, with clear chains of command and specialized units for different types of combat. The Egyptian army also included foreign mercenaries and auxiliary troops from allied nations. Egyptian pottery and ceramics reveal incredible artistic skill and technical innovation. Potters developed glazing techniques that produced brilliant colors and durable finishes, creating vessels that were both functional and beautiful. The shapes and decorative motifs of Egyptian pottery changed over time, allowing archaeologists to date sites and trace cultural developments across the millennia. The ancient Egyptians were skilled metalworkers who created tools, weapons, and decorative objects from copper, bronze, gold, and eventually iron. Their techniques for smelting ore, creating alloys, and working metal were passed down through generations of craftsmen. Egyptian metalwork was so highly regarded that examples have been found in archaeological sites throughout the ancient world, evidence of extensive trade networks. Egyptian shipbuilding technology was remarkably advanced, producing vessels capable of carrying massive stone blocks, trading expeditions to distant lands, and royal barges decorated with incredible artistry. The construction of these ships required sophisticated knowledge of hull design, sail rigging, and navigation techniques. Some Egyptian ships were over 100 feet long and could carry crews of dozens of sailors and passengers. The role of women in ancient Egyptian religion was particularly significant, with many goddesses holding positions of supreme importance in the pantheon. Female priests served in temples throughout Egypt, performing crucial religious ceremonies and maintaining the sacred spaces. Some women achieved such religious prominence that they were essentially co-rulers with their husbands, wielding enormous influence over both spiritual and political matters. Egyptian entertainment included sophisticated musical performances with orchestras featuring multiple instruments playing complex compositions. Musicians were highly skilled professionals who could read musical notation and perform at religious ceremonies, royal banquets, and public festivals. The variety of instruments used by ancient Egyptians was impressive, ranging from simple percussion devices to elaborate stringed instruments with multiple resonating chambers. The ancient Egyptians developed early forms of banking and credit systems that facilitated trade and commerce throughout their empire. Temple complexes often served as banks, storing wealth and issuing loans secured by property or future harvests. These financial institutions kept detailed records of transactions and developed sophisticated methods for calculating interest and managing risk. Egyptian archaeology continues to yield new discoveries that reshape our understanding of this ancient civilization. Recent excavations have uncovered previously unknown burial sites, revealed new information about daily life in ancient Egypt, and discovered artifacts that demonstrate the incredible sophistication of Egyptian culture. Each new discovery adds another piece to the puzzle of understanding how this remarkable civilization achieved such lasting greatness. The influence of ancient Egyptian architecture extended far beyond their own borders, inspiring building techniques and decorative styles that spread throughout the ancient world. Egyptian columns, with their distinctive capitals shaped like lotus flowers and papyrus plants, became standard elements in classical architecture. The principles of proportion and symmetry developed by Egyptian architects influenced building design for thousands of years. Egyptian contributions to mathematics included the development of geometric principles that were essential for their architectural achievements. They understood concepts like the golden ratio and used sophisticated mathematical formulas to calculate the angles and proportions of their pyramids and temples. Egyptian mathematicians also developed practical applications for their mathematical knowledge, using it to calculate field areas, determine tax assessments, and plan construction projects. The preservation of Egyptian monuments and artifacts presents ongoing challenges for modern archaeologists and conservators. The dry desert climate that helped preserve these ancient treasures for thousands of years is now threatened by increased tourism, urban development, and climate change. International efforts to document and protect Egyptian heritage sites have become increasingly urgent as these irreplaceable cultural treasures face new threats. Ancient Egyptian trade relationships extended across vast distances, with evidence of Egyptian goods found in archaeological sites from Europe to Asia. Egyptian merchants traveled established trade routes that connected the Nile Valley with civilizations throughout the known world. These commercial relationships brought new technologies, materials, and ideas into Egypt while spreading Egyptian innovations to other cultures. The study of ancient Egyptian language and literature reveals a rich tradition of storytelling, poetry, and philosophical writing. Egyptian scribes created works of fiction, recorded historical events, and composed religious texts that provide insight into the thoughts and beliefs of this ancient people. Many of these literary works demonstrate sophisticated narrative techniques and complex moral themes that resonate with readers even today. The decipherment of hieroglyphics remained one of history's greatest puzzles until the discovery of the Rosetta Stone in 1799. This black granite slab contained the same text written in 3 different scripts: hieroglyphics, Demotic Egyptian, and Ancient Greek. French scholar Jean-François Champollion spent over 20 years studying the stone before finally cracking the code in 1822. His breakthrough came when he realized that some hieroglyphic symbols represented sounds rather than just pictures or ideas. This discovery opened up thousands of years of Egyptian writing to modern scholars. Egyptian funeral practices varied dramatically depending on social status and historical period. While wealthy nobles could afford elaborate mummification procedures lasting 70 days, ordinary people developed their own methods of preserving their dead for the afterlife. Some families would bury their loved ones in the hot, dry sand of the desert, which naturally mummified bodies through dehydration. Others used simpler embalming techniques that still allowed for basic preservation without the enormous expense of full royal treatment. The ancient Egyptians were among the first people to develop standardized measurements and weights. Their cubit system, based on the length of a human forearm, allowed for consistent construction across massive building projects. Royal cubits were slightly longer than common cubits, and master builders used specially crafted cubit rods made of wood or stone to ensure accuracy. This standardization was crucial for projects like pyramid construction, where even tiny measurement errors could result in structural failures. Egyptian beer production was a sophisticated industry that provided nutrition and safe drinking water for the entire population. Unlike modern beer, Egyptian beer was thick and nutritious, often serving as a dietary staple rather than just an alcoholic beverage. Brewers used partially baked bread as their base ingredient, fermenting it with date palm sap or honey to create different flavors and alcohol strengths. Even children drank weak beer because it was safer than potentially contaminated water from the Nile. The role of cats in Egyptian society went far beyond their practical value as pest controllers. Cats were so revered that they appeared in religious ceremonies, royal portraits, and elaborate tomb paintings. The goddess Bastet, depicted as either a cat or a woman with a cat's head, was one of the most popular deities in the Egyptian pantheon. When beloved pet cats died, Wealthy families would shave off their eyebrows as a sign of mourning and continue grieving until their eyebrows grew back. Ancient Egyptian doctors specialized in different areas of medicine, much like modern physicians. Some doctors focused on eye diseases, others on digestive problems, and still others on injuries and wounds. The title doctor was actually quite specific in ancient Egypt, with different ranks indicating various levels of expertise. The highest-ranking medical professionals were called chief physicians and often served in royal courts, treating pharaohs and their families. Egyptian glassmaking techniques were so advanced that they produced objects of stunning beauty and complexity. Glass workers could create multicolored vessels by fusing different colored glass rods together, producing intricate patterns and designs. They also developed techniques for making glass beads, bottles, and decorative objects that were traded throughout the ancient world. Some Egyptian glass pieces were so prized that they've been found in archaeological sites thousands of miles from Egypt. The ancient Egyptians understood the importance of hygiene and cleanliness in ways that wouldn't become common in other cultures for centuries. Wealthy Egyptians bathed daily using soap made from animal fats and alkaline salts. They used tweezers to remove body hair, applied deodorants made from aromatic spices, and even used breath fresheners made from herbs and honey. This emphasis on cleanliness was partly practical and partly religious, as purity was considered essential for approaching the gods. Egyptian stone carving reached levels of precision that modern sculptors struggled to match even with power tools. Using only copper chisels, wooden mallets, and abrasive stones, Egyptian craftsmen created sculptures so detailed that individual hairs and fabric textures are clearly visible. The secret lay in their understanding of stone properties and their incredible patience. Master carvers would spend months or even years on a single sculpture, gradually revealing the finished work from within the raw stone. The construction of Egyptian temples followed strict astronomical alignments that connected earthly worship with cosmic events. Many temples were oriented to capture the light of specific stars or constellations at particular times of the year. The Temple of Abu Simbel, for example, was positioned so that twice a year sunlight would penetrate the temple's depths and illuminate statues of the gods in the innermost sanctuary. These alignments required sophisticated astronomical knowledge and precise engineering. Egyptian farming techniques were incredibly efficient, allowing them to feed a large population from relatively limited agricultural land. Farmers developed crop rotation systems that maintained soil fertility, used organic fertilizers made from animal waste and Nile mud, and created sophisticated irrigation networks that could water fields even during dry periods. They also developed storage systems for grain that could preserve harvests for years, protecting against famine during poor growing seasons. The ancient Egyptians were master jewelers, who created ornaments of breathtaking beauty and technical sophistication. They developed techniques for working with gold that included granulation, filigree, and complex alloy creation. Egyptian jewelers could create incredibly thin gold leaf, produce intricate chainwork, and set precious stones with remarkable precision. The jewelry found in royal tombs demonstrates skill levels that rival the best modern craftsmen. Egyptian record-keeping was so thorough that we have detailed accounts of everything from royal hunting expeditions to temple inventory lists. Scribes maintained records on papyrus, limestone flakes called ostraca, and even broken pottery pieces when other writing materials weren't available. These records provide incredible insights into daily life in ancient Egypt, revealing everything from worker complaints to love letters between married couples. The Egyptian understanding of chemistry extended to creating pigments and dyes that have retained their brilliant colors for thousands of years. They developed Egyptian blue, the first synthetic pigment in human history, by heating a mixture of sand, copper, and calcium carbonate. This vibrant blue color appears throughout Egyptian art and was so prized that it was traded throughout the ancient Mediterranean world. Ancient Egyptian furniture makers created pieces that combined functionality with artistic beauty. They used sophisticated joinery techniques that didn't require nails or screws, instead relying on precisely cut joints and organic adhesives. Egyptian furniture often featured intricate inlays of ivory, ebony, and precious metals, with designs that incorporated religious symbols and protective motifs. Some pieces were so well constructed that they've survived intact for over 3,000 years. The Egyptian postal system was one of the first organized communication networks in human history. Royal messengers carried official correspondence throughout the empire, following established routes with way stations where they could rest and change horses. This system allowed pharaohs to maintain control over distant provinces and coordinate complex administrative tasks across vast territories. Private individuals could also send letters through this network by paying fees to royal officials. Egyptian perfumers created fragrances that were considered the finest in the ancient world. They extracted oils from flowers, herbs, and tree resins using sophisticated distillation techniques. These perfumes served both cosmetic and religious purposes, with different scents associated with various gods and goddesses. The recipes for some Egyptian perfumes were so closely guarded that they died with their creators, and modern attempts to recreate them have met with limited success. The role of animals in Egyptian warfare was significant, with various creatures serving different military purposes. Horses revolutionized Egyptian warfare when they were introduced during the New Kingdom period, allowing for the development of chariot corps that dominated ancient battlefields. War dogs were trained for combat and used to track enemies, while messenger pigeons carried communications across long distances during military campaigns. Ancient Egyptian taxation systems were remarkably sophisticated, with officials who could calculate complex assessments based on land productivity, flood levels, and economic conditions. Tax collectors used standardized measuring devices to assess grain harvests and recorded their findings on papyrus documents that were filed in government archives. The system was generally fair, with provisions for tax relief during poor harvest years or natural disasters. Egyptian boat-building techniques produced vessels that were perfectly adapted to Nile River conditions. Builders used papyrus reeds for lightweight craft, cedar wood for larger vessels, and developed sophisticated methods for waterproofing and steering. Some Egyptian boats were designed to be dismantled and carried overland when necessary, then reassembled for river travel. These vessels were so well designed that their basic principles influenced boat building throughout the ancient world. The ancient Egyptians developed early forms of insurance and risk management for their trading expeditions. Merchants would pool their resources to spread the risks of long-distance trade, sharing both profits and losses from commercial ventures. Temple complexes often served as insurance providers, using their vast wealth to underwrite risky but potentially profitable trading missions to distant lands. Egyptian military engineering included the development of siege weapons and defensive fortifications that were ahead of their time. Egyptian engineers could build movable siege towers, battering rams, and scaling ladders for attacking enemy fortifications. They also developed sophisticated defensive techniques, including multiple walls, hidden passages, and complex gate systems that made their fortresses nearly impregnable. The preservation techniques used by ancient Egyptians extended beyond mummification to include methods for protecting papyrus documents, wooden objects, and metal artifacts. They understood which materials would survive in their climate and developed storage methods that protected precious items from insects, moisture, and decay. Many of these preservation techniques were so effective that modern museums still use similar principles when storing ancient artifacts. Egyptian mathematics included geometric principles that were essential for their architectural and engineering achievements. They could calculate the volume of pyramids, determine the slope angles of ramps, and solve complex problems involving fractions and proportions. Egyptian mathematical papyri show that they understood concepts like the Pythagorean theorem centuries before it was formally described by Greek mathematicians. The influence of Egyptian religious beliefs extended throughout the ancient world, with Egyptian gods and goddesses being adopted by other cultures. The worship of Isis, for example, spread throughout the Roman Empire and influenced early Christian theology. Egyptian concepts about the afterlife, divine judgment, and moral behavior affected religious thinking across the Mediterranean region and beyond. Ancient Egyptian urban planning created cities that were marvels of organization and efficiency. Planners laid out streets in grid patterns, provided for waste removal and water distribution, and designated specific areas for different types of activities. Egyptian cities included residential neighborhoods, commercial districts, religious precincts, and industrial areas, all carefully planned to maximize both functionality and quality of life for their inhabitants. The legacy of ancient Egyptian innovation continues to influence modern technology and culture. Their contributions to medicine, engineering, mathematics, and art established foundations that later civilizations built upon. Even today, archaeologists and scientists continue discovering new aspects of Egyptian achievement, revealing the incredible sophistication of a civilization that flourished along the Nile River thousands of years ago. The study of ancient Egyptian astronomy reveals a civilization that was deeply connected to the rhythms of the cosmos. Egyptian priests developed star maps that were incredibly detailed, identifying individual stars and tracking their movements across the night sky with remarkable precision. They recognized that certain stars appeared at specific times of the year, using these observations to create calendars that guided agricultural activities and religious ceremonies. The ceiling of the tomb of Seti I contains one of the most complete ancient star maps ever discovered, showing constellations conditions that the Egyptians used for navigation and timekeeping. Egyptian metallurgy reached levels of sophistication that wouldn't be matched in other parts of the world for centuries. Master metalworkers developed techniques for creating bronze alloys with specific properties, producing tools and weapons that were both durable and sharp. They understood how different combinations of copper and tin would affect the final product, adjusting their formulas to create everything from delicate jewelry to sturdy agricultural implements. Egyptian bronze work was so highly regarded that examples have been found throughout the ancient Mediterranean, evidence of extensive trade in these superior metal goods. The role of dreams and prophecy in Egyptian society was considered essential for understanding divine will and predicting future events. Professional dream interpreters worked in temples and royal courts, using detailed manuals that explained the meanings of various dream symbols and scenarios. These interpretation guides were incredibly specific, explaining what it meant to dream of different animals, colors, or situations. The Egyptians believed that gods communicated through dreams, making dream interpretation a crucial skill for anyone seeking divine guidance. Ancient Egyptian surgical techniques were remarkably advanced, with medical papyri describing procedures that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of human anatomy. Egyptian surgeons could remove tumors, repair fractures, and even perform basic eye surgery using instruments that were surprisingly similar to modern surgical tools. They understood the importance of cleanliness during medical procedures and developed antiseptic solutions made from honey and other natural ingredients that helped prevent infections. The Egyptian system of land measurement and surveying was essential for managing the complex irrigation networks that supported their agriculture. Royal surveyors used standardized measuring ropes and geometric principles to map field boundaries, calculate areas, and plan irrigation channels. After each annual flood, surveyors would re-establish property boundaries that had been washed away by the rising waters, using detailed records and mathematical calculations to ensure accurate reconstruction. Egyptian textile dyeing produced fabrics in brilliant colors that have retained their vibrancy for thousands of years. Dyers developed techniques for extracting colors from plants, minerals, and even insects, creating shades that ranged from deep purples to bright yellows. The process of dyeing linen required careful timing and precise temperature control, skills that were passed down through generations of craftsmen. Some Egyptian dyes were so valuable that they became major trade commodities, exported throughout the ancient world. The ancient Egyptians developed sophisticated methods for food storage and preservation that allowed them to maintain adequate nutrition even during times of scarcity. Granaries were designed with features that protected stored grain from rodents, insects, and moisture, using architectural techniques that created optimal storage conditions. Egyptian food preservation included smoking, salting, and drying techniques that could keep meat and fish edible for months. They also developed fermentation processes for creating preserved vegetables that provided essential nutrients during the dry season. Egyptian boat construction techniques produced vessels that were perfectly adapted for different purposes and conditions. Builders understood how hull shape affected speed and stability, creating specialized designs for everything from fishing boats to ceremonial barges. The largest Egyptian ships could carry enormous stone blocks, weighing hundreds of tons, requiring sophisticated understanding of buoyancy, weight distribution, and structural engineering. These vessels were so well designed that many remained seaworthy for decades of heavy use. The role of scribes in Egyptian legal system was crucial for maintaining justice and order throughout the kingdom. Legal scribes recorded court proceedings, drafted contracts, and maintained archives of legal precedents that guided future decisions. They understood complex legal principles and could draft documents that protected the rights of all parties involved in agreements. The precision and detail of Egyptian legal documents demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of jurisprudence that influenced legal systems throughout the ancient world. Egyptian perfume production was a highly specialized craft that created fragrances prized throughout the ancient Mediterranean. Perfumers understood how different ingredients would interact and change over time, creating complex scents that could last for hours on the skin. They developed distillation techniques for extracting essential oils from flowers and herbs, using equipment that was remarkably similar to modern perfume-making apparatus. Some Egyptian perfume formulas were so closely guarded that they were considered state secrets. The ancient Egyptians were master gardeners who created elaborate landscape designs that transformed desert environments into lush oases. Egyptian garden design included artificial pools, shade structures, and carefully planned plantings that created both beauty and practical benefits. They understood principles of plant compatibility and seasonal growth patterns, creating gardens that provided food, medicine, and aesthetic pleasure throughout the year. Some Egyptian gardens included exotic plants, imported from distant lands, demonstrating the extensive reach of their trading networks. Egyptian musical instruments reached levels of sophistication that produced rich, complex sounds suitable for both religious ceremonies and entertainment. Instrument makers understood acoustic principles and created harps, flutes, and drums with carefully calculated proportions that produced optimal sound quality. Musicians were highly trained professionals who could read musical notation and perform complex compositions that required coordination between multiple instruments. The variety and quality of Egyptian musical instruments influenced musical development throughout the ancient world. The Egyptian understanding of chemistry extended to creating adhesives and binding agents that were incredibly durable and effective. They developed glues made from animal products, plant resins, and mineral compounds that could bind different materials together permanently. These adhesives were used in everything from furniture construction to papyrus manufacturing, demonstrating sophisticated understanding of chemical properties and reactions. Some Egyptian adhesive formulations were so effective that modern scientists have studied them to understand their composition and properties. Ancient Egyptian mining operations required sophisticated logistics and engineering to extract valuable materials from remote desert locations. Mining expeditions involved hundreds of workers, along with the equipment, food, and water needed to sustain operations in harsh environments. Engineers developed techniques for following ore veins deep underground, creating mine shafts and tunnels that were both safe and efficient. The organization required for these mining operations demonstrates the administrative capabilities of Egyptian civilization. Egyptian pottery production included techniques for creating ceramics that were both functional and artistically beautiful. Potters understood how different clay compositions would affect the final product, adjusting their materials to create vessels with specific properties. They developed glazing techniques that produced brilliant colors and smooth surfaces. Using mineral compounds that created chemical reactions during firing, Egyptian pottery was so highly regarded that examples have been found in archaeological sites throughout Europe, Africa, and Asia. The role of women in Egyptian crafts and manufacturing was significant, with female artisans specializing in textile production, jewelry making, and perfume creation. Women operated looms that produced fine linen fabrics, created intricate beadwork and jewelry designs, and managed perfume workshops that supplied both local and export markets. These female craftspeople were highly skilled professionals whose work contributed significantly to Egypt's economic prosperity and cultural achievements. Egyptian architectural principles included sophisticated understanding of structural engineering that allowed them to create buildings of unprecedented size and durability. Architects understood how to distribute weight effectively, create stable foundations in challenging soil conditions, and design structures that could withstand earthquakes and other natural forces. They developed construction techniques that used leverage and mechanical advantage to move and position massive stone blocks with remarkable precision. The ancient Egyptians developed early forms of quality control and standardization that ensured consistency in their manufactured goods. Master craftsmen established standards for everything from pottery thickness to jewelry purity, training apprentices to meet these exacting requirements. Guild systems maintained quality standards and protected trade secrets, ensuring that Egyptian products maintained their reputation for excellence throughout the ancient world. Egyptian military organization included sophisticated supply systems that could support large armies during extended campaigns. Military logistics specialists calculated the food, water, weapons, and equipment needed for different types of operations, organizing supply trains that could follow armies across vast distances. They developed portable equipment and lightweight rations that allowed soldiers to remain effective during long marches through difficult terrain. The influence of Egyptian artistic styles extended throughout the ancient world, with Egyptian motifs and techniques appearing in the art of many other civilizations. Egyptian artists developed distinctive styles that combined realistic representation with symbolic meaning, creating works that were both beautiful and spiritually significant. Their techniques for working with different materials influenced artistic development across the Mediterranean region and beyond. Ancient Egyptian urban sanitation systems were remarkably advanced for their time, including drainage networks and waste management systems that maintained public health in densely populated cities. Engineers designed sewer systems that carried waste away from residential areas, preventing the spread of disease and maintaining clean living conditions. These sanitation systems required sophisticated understanding of hydraulics and urban planning that wouldn't be matched in other civilizations for centuries. The preservation of Egyptian knowledge through libraries and schools ensured that their achievements would be passed down to future generations. Educational institutions trained scribes, priests, and craftsmen in the skills needed to maintain Egyptian civilization, creating a continuous tradition of learning and innovation. These educational systems were so effective that Egyptian knowledge continued to influence other cultures long after the civilization itself had ended. Egyptian contributions to human knowledge were so significant that they continue to influence modern science, technology, and culture. Their achievements in medicine, engineering, mathematics, and art established foundations that later civilizations built upon, creating legacies that persist to this day. The ongoing study of ancient Egyptian culture continues to reveal new insights into human creativity, ingenuity, and the remarkable achievements possible when knowledge and skill are applied with dedication and vision. The Egyptian approach to international diplomacy was far more sophisticated than most people realize, involving complex networks of marriage alliances, tribute systems, and cultural exchanges that maintained peace across vast regions. Egyptian pharaohs regularly married foreign princesses to cement political alliances, while also sending their own daughters to marry rulers of allied kingdoms. These diplomatic marriages weren't just symbolic gestures, but carefully calculated political moves that created lasting bonds between nations and established clear lines of succession and territorial control. Egyptian espionage networks operated throughout the ancient world, gathering intelligence about potential threats and opportunities for expansion. Royal agents traveled disguised as merchants, priests, or craftsmen, reporting back to the pharaoh about military preparations, political instability, and economic conditions in neighboring kingdoms. This intelligence gathering was so sophisticated that Egyptian rulers often knew about potential invasions or rebellions months before they occurred, allowing them to take preventive action or prepare defensive measures. The ancient Egyptians developed revolutionary techniques for mass production that allowed them to create standardized goods on an unprecedented scale. Workshop systems organized craftsmen into specialized teams where each worker focused on specific tasks, dramatically increasing efficiency and quality control. These production methods were particularly evident in pottery making, textile production, and metalworking, where Egyptian workshops could produce thousands of identical items to meet both domestic needs and export demands. Egyptian innovations in food processing created dietary options that sustained large populations and supported long-distance travel and military campaigns. They developed techniques for creating portable foods that remain nutritious and edible for extended periods, including dried fruit leather, concentrated protein bars made from nuts and honey, and fermented grain products that provided essential vitamins and minerals. These food processing innovations were crucial for supporting the large workforce required for major construction projects. The role of Egyptian women in business and commerce was remarkably progressive, with female entrepreneurs who operated their own trading companies and managed complex commercial ventures. Women could own ships, employ workers, negotiate contracts, and accumulate significant wealth through their business activities. Some female merchants specialized in luxury goods like perfumes, jewelry, and fine textiles, building trading networks that extended throughout the Mediterranean world and generating substantial profits for their enterprises. Egyptian agricultural innovation included the development of specialized farming tools and techniques that maximized crop yields in challenging desert conditions. Farmers created sophisticated plowing systems that could work hard-packed soil, developed seed drilling techniques that conserved precious water resources, and invented harvesting tools that minimized grain loss during collection. These agricultural innovations were so effective that Egyptian farming methods influenced agricultural development throughout the ancient world. The ancient Egyptians were pioneers in creating artificial lighting systems that allowed for extended work hours and nighttime activities. They developed oil lamps with carefully designed wicks that burned cleanly and efficiently, created reflective surfaces that amplified light output, and even experimented with early forms of candles made from animal fats and plant fibers. These lighting innovations were particularly important for craftsmen who needed to work on detailed projects, and for priests who conducted nighttime religious ceremonies. Egyptian water purification techniques were remarkably advanced, including filtration systems that removed impurities and made brackish water suitable for drinking. Engineers designed settling tanks where sediment could separate from water, created sand filters that removed harmful particles, and developed chemical treatments using natural minerals that killed dangerous bacteria. These water treatment methods were essential for maintaining public health in cities where thousands of people depended on shared water supplies. The Egyptian postal and communication system included sophisticated message encryption techniques that protected sensitive information from interception by enemies or rivals. Royal scribes developed coded writing systems that could disguise the true meaning of important communications using symbolic substitutions and hidden messages that only authorized recipients could understand. This cryptographic sophistication demonstrates the high level of security awareness in Egyptian government operations. Ancient Egyptian waste management systems were incredibly efficient, including recycling programs that reused materials and minimized environmental impact. Craftsmen developed techniques for melting down old bronze tools to create new ones, recycling papyrus by scraping off old text and writing new documents on the clean surface, and reusing building materials from demolished structures in new construction projects. This recycling approach was both economically beneficial and environmentally responsible. Egyptian innovations in timekeeping included the development of portable timepieces that allowed for precise scheduling and coordination of activities. They created shadow clocks that used the position of shadows to indicate time during daylight hours, water clocks that measured time by the controlled flow of water through calibrated openings, and even early forms of hourglasses that used flowing sand to track specific time intervals. These timekeeping devices were essential for coordinating complex projects and religious ceremonies. The ancient Egyptians developed sophisticated quality assurance systems that maintained consistent standards across all their manufactured products. Master craftsmen established detailed specifications for everything from the thickness of pottery walls to the purity of gold alloys, training inspectors who could identify substandard work and ensure that only acceptable products reached consumers. These quality control measures were crucial for maintaining Egypt's reputation for producing superior goods. Egyptian transportation innovations included the development of specialized vehicles designed for different types of cargo and terrain conditions. Engineers created wheeled carts with suspension systems that protected fragile goods during transport, designed sleds with runners that could move heavy loads across sand and stone surfaces, and developed portable bridges that allowed caravans to cross rivers and ravines safely. These transportation improvements were essential for maintaining trade networks across vast distances. The role of Egyptian teachers and educators was crucial for transmitting knowledge and skills to future generations, with specialized schools that trained students in different professions and trades. Educational institutions included medical schools that taught surgical techniques and diagnostic methods, engineering schools that trained architects and construction supervisors, and artistic academies that preserved traditional techniques while encouraging innovation. These educational systems ensured continuity of knowledge and maintained Egypt's technological advantages. Egyptian military medicine was remarkably advanced, with battlefield surgeons who could treat combat injuries and save soldiers' lives under difficult conditions. Military medical personnel developed portable surgical kits, created emergency treatment protocols for different types of wounds, and established field hospitals that could be quickly assembled near battle sites. These medical innovations significantly reduced military casualties and maintained the effectiveness of Egyptian armies during extended campaigns. The ancient Egyptians were master logisticians who could organize and supply massive construction projects involving tens of thousands of workers over periods of decades. Project managers calculated the quantities of food, tools, materials, and housing needed for different phases of construction, coordinating supply deliveries from across the empire to ensure that work could proceed without interruption. This organizational capability was essential for completing projects like the Great Pyramids that required unprecedented coordination of resources and personnel. Egyptian innovations in mechanical engineering included the development of sophisticated machines that could lift, move, and position heavy objects with remarkable precision. Engineers created lever systems that multiplied human strength, designed pulley arrangements that changed the direction of force application, and built ramps and scaffolding systems that allowed workers to reach great heights safely. These mechanical innovations were crucial for their monumental construction achievements. The Egyptian understanding of human psychology was evident in their approaches to motivation and workforce management, using techniques that maintained high morale and productivity among large groups of workers. Supervisors understood the importance of recognition and rewards, implementing systems that acknowledged outstanding performance and provided incentives for quality work. They also developed conflict resolution methods that maintained harmony among diverse groups of workers from different backgrounds and skill levels. Ancient Egyptian market research techniques allowed merchants and craftsmen to understand consumer preferences and adapt their products to meet changing demands. Traders gathered information about popular styles, colors, and features in different markets, reporting this intelligence back to producers who could adjust their manufacturing accordingly. This market awareness was crucial for maintaining Egypt's competitive position in international trade and ensuring continued demand for Egyptian goods. Egyptian innovations in storage and preservation extended beyond food to include methods for protecting valuable documents, artwork, and manufactured goods from deterioration over time. Archivists developed climate control techniques that maintained optimal temperature and humidity levels in storage facilities, created protective containers that shielded contents from light and moisture, and established handling procedures that minimized damage during access and transport. The ancient Egyptians developed early forms of insurance and risk management that protected individuals and businesses from financial losses due to accidents, theft, or natural disasters, merchants could purchase protection for their trading ventures, craftsmen could insure their workshops and tools, and even farmers could obtain coverage for their crops and livestock. These insurance systems were administered through temple complexes that had the financial resources to honor claims and the administrative capabilities to manage complex agreements. Egyptian achievements in optics included the development of magnifying devices and light-focusing instruments that enhanced human vision and improved the precision of detailed work. Craftsmen created polished crystal lenses that could magnify small objects, designed mirrors that concentrated sunlight for heating and lighting purposes, and even experimented with early forms of telescopes for astronomical observations. These optical innovations were particularly valuable for jewelers, scribes, and other professionals who worked with minute details. The role of Egyptian inventors and innovators was recognized and rewarded by a society that valued technological advancement and creative problem-solving. Royal courts maintained workshops where talented individuals could experiment with new ideas and develop improved versions of existing tools and techniques. These innovation centers were responsible for many of the technological breakthroughs that gave Egypt competitive advantages in warfare, construction, and manufacturing. Ancient Egyptian project management techniques included sophisticated scheduling and coordination methods that ensured complex undertakings were completed efficiently and on time. Project leaders developed detailed timelines that accounted for seasonal variations, resource availability, and workforce capabilities, adjusting plans as needed to accommodate changing conditions. These management skills were essential for coordinating the multiple phases of major construction projects and maintaining progress despite inevitable challenges and setbacks. Egyptian contributions to materials science included the development of new alloys, composites, and synthetic materials that had superior properties compared to naturally occurring substances. Metallurgists experimented with different combinations of metals to create alloys with specific characteristics, while chemists developed synthetic pigments, adhesives, and preservatives that outperformed natural alternatives. These materials innovations provided Egyptian craftsmen with superior tools and resources for their work. The ancient Egyptians understood the importance of standardization and interchangeability in manufacturing, developing systems that allowed components made by different craftsmen to fit together perfectly. This standardization was particularly evident in construction projects, where stone blocks cut by different teams needed to align precisely, and in military equipment, where weapons and armor components needed to be interchangeable for maintenance and repair purposes. Egyptian innovations in communication technology included the development of long-distance signaling systems that could transmit information rapidly across vast territories. Engineers designed beacon networks that used fire and smoke signals to relay messages between distant outposts, created standardized signal codes that could convey complex information efficiently, and established relay stations that ensured continuous communication coverage throughout the empire. The legacy of Egyptian innovation continues to influence modern technology and scientific understanding, with many fundamental principles and techniques that were first developed along the Nile River still forming the basis for contemporary applications. Their achievements in engineering, medicine, chemistry, and mathematics provided foundations that subsequent civilizations built upon, creating a continuous tradition of human knowledge and technological advancement that persists to this day. The Egyptian approach to urban planning created cities that were marvels of organization and functionality, with residential districts carefully separated from industrial areas to maintain quality of life for inhabitants. City planners understood the importance of wind patterns and positioned workshops that produce smoke or odors downwind from residential neighborhoods. They created wide boulevards for ceremonial processions and narrow side streets for daily commerce, designing traffic flow patterns that minimized congestion even during busy market days. These urban planning principles were so effective that they influenced city design throughout the ancient Mediterranean world. Egyptian innovations in textile manufacturing included the development of specialized looms and weaving techniques that produced fabrics of extraordinary quality and durability. Master weavers could create linen so fine that it was nearly transparent, yet strong enough to last for thousands of years. They developed techniques for creating complex patterns and designs directly into the fabric during the weaving process, eliminating the need for separate decoration steps. Some Egyptian textiles were woven with gold threads integrated into the fabric, creating garments that literally glittered in sunlight and candlelight. The ancient Egyptians were pioneers in developing systematic approaches to problem-solving and innovation, establishing workshops where craftsmen could experiment with new techniques and materials. These research centers were supported by royal patronage and temple funding, allowing inventors to focus on developing improvements without worrying about immediate commercial applications. Many breakthrough innovations emerged from these experimental workshops, including new construction techniques, improved medical procedures, and enhanced manufacturing processes that gave Egypt technological advantages over its competitors. Egyptian mathematical achievements extended far beyond basic calculations to include sophisticated geometric principles that were essential for their architectural and engineering accomplishments. Egyptian mathematicians understood concepts like similar triangles, proportional relationships, and complex area calculations that allowed them to design structures with remarkable precision. They developed mathematical formulas for calculating the volume of different geometric shapes, determining optimal angles for ramps and inclines, and predicting the behavior of structural elements under various load conditions. The role of Egyptian philosophers and thinkers was crucial for developing the intellectual frameworks that guided their civilization's approach to ethics, governance, and social organization. Egyptian philosophical traditions emphasize concepts like cosmic order, moral balance, and the interconnectedness of all life, creating value systems that promoted social stability and individual responsibility. These philosophical principles influenced legal codes, religious practices, and educational curricula, providing ethical foundations that shaped Egyptian culture for millennia. Ancient Egyptian innovations in agriculture included the development of crop breeding techniques that produced varieties of plants specifically adapted to local growing conditions. Egyptian farmers understood how to select seeds from the most productive plants, gradually improving crop yields and resistance to diseases over multiple generations. They developed different varieties of wheat, barley, and other grains that were optimized for different soil types and irrigation conditions, maximizing agricultural productivity throughout their territory. Egyptian achievements in chemistry included the development of synthetic materials and chemical processes that created products superior to anything available in nature. Egyptian chemists could produce artificial gemstones that were nearly indistinguishable from natural ones, create synthetic dyes that were more brilliant and durable than plant-based colors, and develop chemical compounds with specific properties for use in medicine, manufacturing, and preservation. These chemical innovations gave Egyptian craftsmen access to materials that weren't available to their competitors. The ancient Egyptians developed sophisticated systems for measuring and monitoring environmental conditions that allowed them to predict and respond to changes in weather patterns, flood levels, and agricultural conditions. Royal observers stationed throughout the kingdom recorded detailed information about rainfall, temperature, wind patterns, and river conditions, transmitting this data to central authorities who could coordinate responses to potential problems. This environmental monitoring system was crucial for managing agriculture and preventing famine during difficult years. Egyptian innovations in mechanical engineering included the development of complex machines that could perform multiple functions simultaneously, increasing efficiency and reducing labor requirements. Engineers created devices that combined cutting, shaping, and finishing operations in single machines, designed systems that could move materials automatically between different processing stages, and developed quality control mechanisms that could detect and correct errors without human intervention. These mechanical innovations were particularly important for large-scale manufacturing operations. The role of Egyptian women in intellectual and cultural activities was significant, with female scholars who made important contributions to mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and literature. Women served as temple scribes, court advisors, and educational administrators, positions that required extensive knowledge and exceptional skills. Some women achieved such intellectual prominence that their writings and discoveries influenced Egyptian culture for generations, demonstrating that gender was not a barrier to intellectual achievement in ancient Egyptian society. Ancient Egyptian innovations in transportation included the development of specialized vehicles and infrastructure systems that facilitated movement of people and goods across vast distances. Engineers designed roads with proper drainage and surface treatments that remained passable during flood seasons, created way station networks that provided rest and resupply points for travelers, and developed vehicle designs that were optimized for different types of cargo and terrain conditions. These transportation improvements were essential for maintaining political control and economic prosperity across their extensive territory. Egyptian achievements in metallurgy included the development of heat treatment processes that could alter the properties of metals to meet specific requirements. Metalworkers understood how controlled heating and cooling could change the hardness, flexibility, and durability of different metals and alloys, allowing them to create tools and weapons with optimized characteristics. They developed techniques for case hardening that created tools with hard cutting edges and tough, resilient cores, providing superior performance compared to simpler manufacturing methods. The ancient Egyptians were master organizers who developed administrative systems capable of coordinating complex activities across multiple locations and time periods. Administrative officials created detailed procedural manuals that standardized government operations, established communication protocols that ensured accurate information flow between different departments, and developed record-keeping systems that maintained accountability and prevented corruption. These organizational innovations were crucial for managing an empire that spanned thousands of miles and included millions of people. Egyptian innovations in construction technology included the development of modular building systems that allowed for rapid assembly of large structures using prefabricated components. Builders created standardized building elements that could be mass-produced in workshops and then transported to construction sites for assembly, dramatically reducing construction time and improving quality control. These modular construction techniques were particularly valuable for building temples, administrative buildings, and housing complexes in newly established settlements. The role of Egyptian musicians and performers was essential for maintaining cultural traditions and providing entertainment that enriched daily life for people at all social levels. Professional entertainers developed sophisticated performance techniques that combined music, dance, storytelling, and theatrical elements, creating complex shows that could last for hours. These performances served not only as entertainment, but also as methods for preserving historical events, religious teachings, and cultural values, ensuring that important knowledge was passed down through generations. Ancient Egyptian innovations in water management included the development of sophisticated hydraulic systems that could control water flow with remarkable precision. Engineers created adjustable gates and channels that could direct water exactly where it was needed, designed reservoir systems that could store water during abundant periods for use during dry seasons, and developed distribution networks that ensured equitable water access for all community members. These water management innovations were crucial for supporting large populations in an otherwise arid environment. Egyptian achievements in optics and astronomy included the development of precise observational instruments that allowed for accurate measurements of celestial movements and positions. Astronomers created devices that could track the positions of stars and planets with remarkable accuracy, developed mathematical models that could predict astronomical events, and established observational procedures that produced consistent and reliable data. These astronomical innovations were essential for creating accurate calendars and navigation systems. The ancient Egyptians developed sophisticated approaches to quality management that ensured consistent excellence in all their products and services. Quality supervisors established detailed standards for every aspect of production, trained inspectors who could identify even minor defects, and created feedback systems that allowed for continuous improvement of manufacturing processes. These quality management systems were so effective that Egyptian products maintained their reputation for superiority throughout the ancient world. Egyptian innovations in food technology included the development of processing techniques that enhance nutrition, flavor, and storage life of various food products. Food technicians understood how fermentation could improve digestibility and create beneficial nutrients, developed seasoning combinations that enhanced flavor while providing medicinal benefits, and created packaging methods that protected food from contamination and spoilage. These food technology innovations were crucial for supporting large populations and maintaining nutrition during travel and military campaigns. The role of Egyptian engineers and architects was central to creating the infrastructure systems that supported their advanced civilization. Engineering professionals developed standardized design procedures that ensured structural integrity and safety, created construction management systems that coordinated complex building projects, and established maintenance protocols that kept infrastructure systems operating efficiently over long periods. These engineering achievements provided the foundation for Egypt's economic prosperity and military power. Ancient Egyptian innovations in manufacturing included the development of assembly line production methods that dramatically increased productivity while maintaining quality standards. Workshop supervisors organized production processes into sequential stages where workers specialized in specific tasks, created quality control checkpoints that caught errors before they could propagate through the system, and developed training programs that quickly brought new workers up to required skill levels. These manufacturing innovations allowed Egypt to produce goods in quantities that met both domestic needs and export demands. Egyptian achievements in medicine included the development of diagnostic techniques that could identify diseases and conditions with remarkable accuracy. Medical practitioners understood how to interpret physical symptoms, developed testing procedures that revealed internal conditions, and created treatment protocols that addressed root causes rather than just just symptoms. They established medical schools that trained new generations of physicians and maintained libraries of medical knowledge that preserved and expanded their understanding of human health and disease. The ancient Egyptians were pioneers in developing sustainable resource management practices that ensured long-term availability of essential materials and resources. Resource managers understood the importance of conservation and renewal, established harvesting quotas that prevented overexploitation of natural resources, and developed recycling systems that maximized the value extracted from available materials. These sustainability practices were crucial for maintaining prosperity over the thousands of years that Egyptian civilization flourished. Egyptian innovations in communication technology included the development of standardized symbols and protocols that enabled accurate information transmission across vast distances and diverse populations. Communications specialists created universal symbols that could be understood by people speaking different languages, developed encoding systems that protected sensitive information from unauthorized access, and established verification procedures that ensured message accuracy and authenticity. These communication innovations were essential for maintaining political control and economic coordination across their extensive empire. The legacy of ancient Egyptian innovation and achievement continues to inspire and influence human civilization thousands of years after their culture reached its peak. Their contributions to science, technology, art, and social organization established foundations that subsequent civilizations built upon, creating a continuous tradition of human advancement and achievement. Modern archaeologists and researchers continue discovering new evidence of Egyptian sophistication and ingenuity, revealing aspects of their civilization that challenge our understanding of what was possible in the ancient world and demonstrate the remarkable capabilities of human creativity and determination when applied with vision and persistence. The ancient Egyptians developed revolutionary techniques for mass communication that allowed information to spread rapidly throughout their vast empire. Royal proclamations could be distributed to every corner of the kingdom within weeks through an organized network of official messengers and public reading stations. These communication hubs were strategically located in major towns and cities, where trained officials would read announcements aloud to gathered crowds, ensuring that even illiterate citizens remained informed about important developments. The system was so efficient that news of military victories, religious festivals, or administrative changes could reach remote provinces almost as quickly as it arrived in the capital. Egyptian innovations in public health included comprehensive sanitation programs that maintained cleanliness and prevented disease outbreaks in densely populated urban areas. Health officials understood the connection between waste management and public wellness, implementing systematic garbage collection services and establishing public latrines that were regularly cleaned and maintained. They developed water quality testing procedures that could identify contaminated sources before they caused widespread illness, and created quarantine protocols for managing infectious diseases that protected healthy populations while caring for the sick. The role of Egyptian librarians and archivists was crucial for preserving and organizing the vast quantities of knowledge that their civilization accumulated over millennia. These information specialists developed sophisticated cataloging systems that allowed scholars to locate specific documents quickly among thousands of papyrus scrolls, created preservation techniques that protected fragile texts from deterioration, and established copying procedures that ensured important works would survive even if original documents were damaged or destroyed. Major libraries employed teams of scribes whose sole responsibility was creating duplicate copies of valuable texts. Ancient Egyptian innovations in manufacturing quality control included statistical sampling techniques that could assess product quality without examining every individual item produced. Quality supervisors understood that testing representative samples could provide accurate information about entire production runs, allowing them to maintain standards while minimizing inspection time and costs. They developed standardized testing procedures that produced consistent results regardless of which inspector performed the evaluation, and created documentation systems that tracked quality trends over time to identify potential problems before they became serious. Egyptian achievements in environmental engineering included sophisticated systems for managing air quality in underground spaces like mines, tombs, and storage chambers. Engineers understood how to create ventilation systems that maintained breathable air in deep underground locations, designed air circulation patterns that removed harmful gases and moisture, and developed monitoring techniques that could detect dangerous conditions before they threatened worker safety. These environmental controls were essential for the extensive mining operations and elaborate tomb construction projects that characterized Egyptian civilization. The ancient Egyptians were pioneers in developing ergonomic design principles that reduced worker fatigue and increased productivity in various trades and occupations. Tool designers understood how handle shapes and sizes affected user comfort and efficiency, creating implements that minimize strain during extended use. Workshop organizers arranged work surfaces and storage areas to reduce unnecessary movement and optimize workflow patterns. These ergonomic improvements were particularly important for craftsmen who spent long hours performing repetitive tasks that required precision and attention to detail. Egyptian innovations in financial management included sophisticated accounting systems that could track complex transactions involving multiple parties, currencies, and time periods. Financial administrators developed double-entry bookkeeping methods that provided built-in error checking and fraud detection, created standardized contracts that clearly defined obligations and payment terms, and established audit procedures that ensured accuracy and honesty in all financial dealings. These accounting innovations were essential for managing the complex economic relationships that supported Egyptian trade and government operations. The role of Egyptian weather observers and forecasters was vital for agricultural planning and military operations that depended on seasonal conditions and climate patterns. These specialists developed techniques for predicting weather changes based on atmospheric conditions, wind patterns, and other environmental indicators. They maintained detailed records of weather patterns over many years, allowing them to identify long-term trends and seasonal variations that affected crop yields and travel conditions. This meteorological knowledge was particularly valuable for timing military campaigns and planning agricultural activities. Ancient Egyptian innovations in materials testing included procedures for evaluating the strength, durability, and quality of various construction materials before they were used in important projects. Testing specialists developed standardized methods for assessing stone quality, metal purity, and wood strength, ensuring that only suitable materials were incorporated into critical structures. They understood how different materials would perform under various stress conditions and developed selection criteria that matched materials to their intended applications, preventing structural failures and ensuring long-term durability. Egyptian achievements in psychological understanding included recognition of the importance of mental health and emotional well-being for individual and social functioning. Medical practitioners understood that physical symptoms could have psychological causes, developing treatment approaches that addressed both mental and physical aspects of illness. They recognized the therapeutic value of music, art, and social interaction, incorporating these elements into healing practices and daily life activities that promoted psychological wellness throughout their communities. The ancient Egyptians developed sophisticated training programs that could quickly teach complex skills to large numbers of workers, ensuring adequate supplies of qualified personnel for major projects and ongoing operations. Training supervisors created structured curricula that broke complex skills into manageable components, developed hands-on exercises that provided practical experience, and established evaluation procedures that verified competency before workers were assigned to important tasks. These educational innovations were crucial for maintaining the high skill levels that Egyptian craftsmanship and engineering required. Egyptian innovations in inventory management included tracking systems that could monitor the location, condition, and availability of thousands of different items stored in warehouses and supply depots throughout their territory. Inventory specialists developed standardized classification systems that organize materials by type, quality, and intended use, created tracking procedures that recorded all movements and transactions, and established reorder protocols that ensured adequate supplies were always available when needed. These inventory management systems were essential for supporting the complex logistical requirements of major construction projects and military operations. The role of Egyptian social workers and community organizers was important for maintaining harmony and cooperation in diverse communities that included people from many different backgrounds and social levels. These specialists understood techniques for mediating disputes, organizing community projects, and providing assistance to individuals and families facing difficulties. They developed programs that helped integrate immigrants and refugees into Egyptian society, created support networks for elderly and disabled citizens, and established recreational activities that brought community members together for positive social interaction. Ancient Egyptian innovations in energy management included techniques for maximizing the efficiency of human labor and animal power in various applications. Energy specialists understood principles of mechanical advantage and developed tools and procedures that multiplied the effectiveness of available power sources. They created work scheduling systems that matched energy-intensive tasks to times when workers were most productive, and developed rest and nutrition programs systems that maintained worker energy levels throughout demanding projects. Egyptian achievements in logistics and supply chain management included sophisticated systems for coordinating the movement of materials and personnel across vast distances and complex organizational structures. Logistics specialists developed transportation networks that could handle different types of cargo efficiently, created scheduling systems that coordinated deliveries with production requirements, and established communication protocols that provided real-time information about supply status and potential problems. These logistical capabilities were essential for supporting the large-scale projects and military operations that characterized Egyptian civilization. The ancient Egyptians were master negotiators who developed diplomatic techniques that could resolve conflicts and establish mutually beneficial agreements between different groups and nations. Diplomatic specialists understood psychology and cultural differences, using this knowledge to find common ground and create solutions that satisfied all parties involved. They developed negotiation procedures that built trust and understanding, established verification methods that ensured agreements were honored, and created dispute resolution mechanisms that could address problems without resorting to warfare. Egyptian innovations in data analysis included statistical techniques that could extract meaningful patterns and trends from large collections of information. Data analysts understood how to organize and interpret complex information sets, identifying relationships and correlations that weren't immediately obvious from casual observation. They developed forecasting methods that could predict future conditions based on historical data, and created reporting systems that presented analytical results in formats that decision-makers could easily understand and use. The role of Egyptian safety inspectors and risk managers was crucial for preventing accidents and minimizing hazards in dangerous occupations like mining, construction, and military service. Safety specialists developed comprehensive hazard identification procedures that could recognize potential dangers before they caused injuries, created safety protocols that reduced risks without significantly impacting productivity, and established emergency response procedures that could minimize damage when accidents did occur. These safety innovations were particularly important for protecting workers in the challenging environments where many Egyptian projects took place. Ancient Egyptian innovations in conflict resolution included mediation techniques that could resolve disputes without damaging relationships between the parties involved. Mediation specialists understood human psychology and social dynamics, using this knowledge to help conflicting parties find mutually acceptable solutions to their disagreements. They developed structured procedures that ensured fair treatment for all participants, created communication techniques that promoted understanding rather than confrontation, and established follow-up procedures that prevented resolved conflicts from recurring. Egyptian achievements in performance measurement included evaluation systems that could assess the effectiveness of individuals, teams, and entire organizations in meeting their objectives. Performance specialists developed objective criteria for measuring success in different types of activities, created feedback mechanisms that helped people improve their performance, and established recognition programs that rewarded outstanding achievement. These performance management systems were essential for maintaining the high standards of excellence that characterized Egyptian civilization in all its endeavors. The ancient Egyptians revolutionized construction project management through systematic approaches that coordinated thousands of workers across multiple simultaneous building phases. Project coordinators developed intricate scheduling matrices that accounted for seasonal variations in material availability, worker productivity cycles, and religious calendar restrictions that affected when certain activities could be performed. They created specialized teams for different construction phases, with master craftsmen who could seamlessly transition between projects as their expertise was needed, ensuring that knowledge and skills were efficiently utilized across the entire construction program. Egyptian innovations in textile engineering produced fabrics with properties that modern manufacturers still struggle to replicate consistently. Master weavers understood how fiber orientation affected fabric strength and drape, creating textiles that were simultaneously lightweight and incredibly durable. They developed weaving patterns that incorporated natural antibacterial properties through specific thread arrangements and material combinations, producing garments that remained hygienic even during extended wear in hot climates. Some Egyptian textiles included integrated ventilation systems created through strategic spacing of different fiber types that promoted air circulation while maintaining structural integrity. The role of Egyptian urban planners extended far beyond simple street layouts to include comprehensive social engineering that promoted community cohesion and economic prosperity. City designers understood how neighborhood organization affected social interactions, creating residential patterns that encouraged positive relationships while minimizing conflicts between different social groups. They integrated commercial, residential and civic spaces in ways that promoted economic activity while maintaining quality of life, designing traffic flow patterns that facilitated commerce without disrupting daily routines. Ancient Egyptian innovations in precision manufacturing included measurement techniques that achieved accuracy levels comparable to modern industrial standards. Master craftsmen developed calibration procedures using standardized reference objects that could verify measurement consistency across different workshops and time periods. They created quality control protocols that could detect variations smaller than the width of a human hair, ensuring that components manufactured in different locations would fit together perfectly during assembly. These precision manufacturing capabilities were particularly crucial for creating the mechanical devices and architectural elements that required exact specifications. Egyptian achievements in biochemistry included understanding of fermentation processes that produce not only alcoholic beverages but also pharmaceutical compounds with specific therapeutic properties. Biochemical specialists could control fermentation conditions to produce different types of beneficial bacteria and enzymes, creating medicinal preparations that addressed various health conditions. They developed preservation techniques that maintained the potency of these biological compounds over extended periods, allowing for storage and distribution of effective medicines throughout their territory. The ancient Egyptians were pioneers in developing systematic approaches to innovation management that encouraged creativity while maintaining practical focus on useful applications. Innovation coordinators established research priorities based on societal needs and available resources, created evaluation criteria that could assess the potential value of new ideas, and developed implementation procedures that could quickly translate promising concepts into practical applications. These innovation management systems produced a continuous stream of technological improvements that maintained Egypt's competitive advantages. Egyptian innovations in thermal management included sophisticated techniques for controlling temperature in various applications from metalworking to food storage. Thermal specialists understood how different materials conducted and retained heat, using this knowledge to design furnaces that maintained precise temperatures for extended periods. They developed cooling systems that could preserve food and materials in hot climates, creating storage environments that prevented spoilage and deterioration. These thermal control capabilities were essential for many manufacturing processes and preservation applications. The role of Egyptian systems analysts was crucial for understanding and optimizing the complex interactions between different components of their civilization. These specialists developed techniques for mapping relationships between various social, economic, and technological systems, identifying bottlenecks and inefficiencies that limited overall performance. They created modeling methods that could predict how changes in one area would affect other parts of the system, allowing decision-makers to anticipate consequences and plan accordingly. Ancient Egyptian innovations in human resources management included comprehensive personnel development programs that maximized individual potential while meeting organizational needs. Human resources specialists developed assessment techniques that could identify individual strengths and aptitudes, created training programs that developed these capabilities systematically, and established career progression paths that provided advancement opportunities while ensuring adequate staffing for essential positions. These personnel management innovations were crucial for maintaining the skilled workforce that Egyptian civilization required. Egyptian achievements in chemical engineering included sophisticated understanding of reaction kinetics and process optimization that produced superior products through controlled chemical transformations. Chemical engineers could manipulate reaction conditions to favor desired outcomes while minimizing unwanted byproducts, creating manufacturing processes that were both efficient and environmentally responsible. They developed purification techniques that could separate and concentrate specific compounds from complex mixtures, producing high-quality materials for various applications. The ancient Egyptians developed revolutionary approaches to information security that protected sensitive data while maintaining necessary access for authorized users. Security specialists created encryption methods that could disguise important information from unauthorized readers, established authentication procedures that verified user identity, and developed access control systems that limited information availability based on security clearance levels. These information security innovations were particularly important for protecting military intelligence and diplomatic communications. Egyptian innovations in workflow optimization included time and motion studies that identified the most efficient methods for performing various tasks and operations. Efficiency specialists observed workers performing different activities, analyzing their movements to identify unnecessary actions and develop improved procedures. They created standardized work methods that reduced fatigue while increasing productivity, and established training programs that taught these optimized techniques to new workers. These workflow improvements were applied across all sectors of Egyptian society. The role of Egyptian environmental monitors was essential for maintaining the ecological balance that supported their agricultural and urban systems. Environmental specialists developed techniques for assessing air and water quality, monitoring soil conditions and vegetation health, and tracking wildlife populations that indicated ecosystem stability. They created early warning systems that could detect environmental problems before they became serious threats, and established remediation procedures that could restore damaged ecosystems to healthy conditions. Ancient Egyptian innovations in mechanical advantage included sophisticated understanding of leverage principles that multiplied human strength in various applications. Mechanical engineers designed tools and machines that could amplify force application, allowing workers to move and manipulate objects far heavier than their natural strength would permit. They developed compound systems that combined multiple mechanical principles for maximum efficiency, creating devices that performed complex operations with minimal human effort. Egyptian achievements in organizational psychology included recognition of factors that influenced group performance and individual motivation in various work environments. Organizational specialists understood how leadership styles affected team productivity, developing management techniques that inspired excellence while maintaining positive working relationships. They created incentive systems that rewarded outstanding performance while encouraging cooperation and knowledge sharing among team members. The ancient Egyptians were master problem solvers who developed systematic approaches to addressing complex challenges that had multiple contributing factors and potential solutions. Problem-solving specialists created analytical frameworks that could break down complicated issues into manageable components, developed evaluation criteria for assessing different solution options, and established implementation procedures that could execute chosen solutions effectively. These problem-solving methodologies were applied to everything from engineering challenges to social conflicts. Egyptian innovations in quality assurance included statistical analysis techniques that could monitor production quality trends and predict potential problems before they affected finished products. Quality specialists developed sampling procedures that provided accurate assessments of overall production quality using minimal inspection resources, created control charts that tracked quality metrics over time, and established corrective action procedures that could address quality problems quickly and effectively. The role of Egyptian maintenance specialists was crucial for ensuring that complex systems and structures remained functional over extended periods despite challenging environmental conditions. Maintenance professionals developed preventive maintenance schedules that addressed potential problems before they caused failures, created diagnostic techniques that could identify developing issues in their early stages, and established repair procedures that restored full functionality while minimizing downtime and costs. Ancient Egyptian innovations in resource allocation included optimization techniques that ensured available materials and personnel were used most effectively to achieve desired outcomes. Resource managers developed allocation algorithms that balanced competing demands for limited resources, created priority systems that ensured critical needs were met first, and established monitoring procedures that tracked resource utilization and identified opportunities for improved efficiency. Egyptian achievements in performance optimization included comprehensive analysis of factors that influenced productivity and effectiveness in various activities and occupations. Performance specialists studied successful individuals and teams to identify best practices and success factors, developed training programs that taught these optimal techniques to others, and created evaluation systems that could measure improvement and provide feedback for continued development. The ancient Egyptians developed sophisticated approaches to risk assessment and management that protected their investments and operations from various types of potential losses. Risk specialists created analytical frameworks that could identify and evaluate different categories of risk, developed mitigation strategies that reduced exposure to potential problems, and established contingency plans that could minimize damage when unexpected events occurred. These risk management innovations were applied to everything from military campaigns to major construction projects. Egyptian innovations in process improvement included continuous evaluation systems that identified opportunities for enhancing efficiency and effectiveness in ongoing operations. Process specialists developed techniques for analyzing current procedures to identify bottlenecks and inefficiencies, created redesigned workflows that eliminated unnecessary steps and delays, and established monitoring systems that ensured improvements were maintained over time. These process optimization capabilities contributed significantly to Egyptian productivity and competitiveness. The legacy of ancient Egyptian innovation in systems thinking and organizational management continues to influence modern approaches to complex problem-solving and large-scale project project coordination. Their understanding of how different components interact within larger systems, combined with their practical experience in managing massive undertakings, established principles that remain relevant for contemporary managers and engineers. The sophistication of their approaches to human resources, quality control, and strategic planning demonstrates capabilities that rival modern organizational theory, proving that effective management principles transcend specific technologies or historical periods. And there you have it, friends. 100 incredible facts that reveal the true depth and sophistication of ancient Egyptian civilization. From the banks of the life-giving Nile to the towering monuments that still pierce the desert sky, we've journeyed through millennia of human achievement that continues to astound us today. These weren't just builders of pyramids or masters of mummification, but pioneers whose innovations in medicine, engineering, mathematics, and social organization laid the very foundations of human civilization. Their legacy lives on in everything from our calendar system to our understanding of the human body, proving that some achievements truly are timeless. What fact surprised you most tonight? Drop a comment below and let me know which aspect of ancient Egypt you'd love to explore further.